Hi guys, in this short tutorial we're going to show you how you can monogram your crochet project. In this case it is a stocking, but you can do it on just about anything: sweaters, hats, scarves. So I've already got this one here. This stocking is actually ready to go, so that's why it's a bit full here. But so in this instance I did a J, and what we're doing here is we're using slip stitches to create this effect here. Okay, so we're just going to take you through how the method that I use. There's of course there's many different ways to do things, and with crochet there isn't always the perfect science, but you know, you can always just find what works best for you, and over the course of time and trial and error, this is basically what's worked for me. So in this instance, the initial that I would like to put on here is the letter K. So just to give me some kind of perspective of where I want to go with this, I just grab a scrap piece of paper here, a bit of cardboard, and I'm just going to draw out the letter. Now, I kind of like the idea of doing it in a cursive fashion as opposed to the print. So I'm just going to write out my K here, which would be, I think, something like that. So I just do this as a visual for myself. If you wanted to, you want to keep it pretty straightforward, you can keep it very linear. I like the idea of kind of softening it up here. So I'm going to need to use two sections, or I'm going to need to cut my yarn at some point. So I'm going to use one slip stitch for the post of the K here, and then I will use a continuous row of slip stitches to create the second section here. So again, not a perfect science, but just gives me a relative idea. So you can make the letter K as large or as small as you like. I just kind of like to set it up against my project to see roughly how it's going to look. I'll probably make the letter just slightly larger than this. So just to be centered, I know that my post is probably going to be somewhere in this vicinity here. So I'm just kind of eyeballing it, which is my favorite thing to do. So I think I'm going to start roughly in that corner here. So I'm just going to leave my hook there just to give me an idea. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the color that I want. So I'm going to use my cuff color to contrast with the actual stocking color. And so you need to actually feed it from behind. Okay, so I've decided this is going to be the spot that I start in. So I am going to just have this short side ready to go. I'm going to feed my hook in through the back, and I am just going to hook it there, leave a bit of a tail at the end here, and then I will feed it through. Okay, so right now nothing is perfectly secured in place, but I've now started feeding it through. So what I want to do now, and in fact you kind of got to work this a little bit upside down. I want to create the post of the K going downwards here. So I am going to insert my hook into the next little section here. Sorry guys, I'm trying to figure out how to readjust this so I can show it to you on camera and still keep it fairly straight. Okay, so now I've inserted again. I'm going to yarn, basically you're yarning over here behind the seams, and then you're going to pull through that first loop that you made. So I'm just gonna bring this up here a little closer, and it will be somewhat fiddly the first few times because you're just adjusting to slip stitching in this fashion. So there we go, we've brought it through and we've created our first slip stitch. Once that happens, that tail should start to feel a little bit more secure in the back there. Okay, so now what I want to do, and this is going to take a lot of like adjusting and readjusting. So I know that I want to move straight downward. So my next spot, fairly close, looks like it's going to be that one. So I'm going to feed my hook through, making sure it doesn't go all the way through to the other side of the stocking. I'm going to, and now here's the other thing, make sure that you're hooking onto the long working end of the yarn and not your short tail, because I've done that mistake. And then you're going to pull it through and then slip stitch through there. So see, now you're starting to create a line there. Okay, and always pull back, make sure that your line is going in the direction that you want it to. And you can loosen it up a wee bit, and then let's find our next stitch, which I think I'm going to make just right below here. So there's no particular stitch. It's just a matter of nestling it in a spot that's going to make aesthetic sense and that's going to fit nicely so that we can pull through and slip stitch again. Just like that. Okay. So unfortunately in this light the brown doesn't sit against this too obviously, but hopefully you can see the gist of what's happening here. So we're going to do that again. I'm going to insert, and you do have to keep an eye on the back end here, so you will have to have your hand in there. You gently pull it through and then slip stitch it through, and then just give it a gentle tug. So you always want to have, you don't want it to be too tight, because, let me just loosen that up here. If you're stitching tightly, then what happens is it starts to bunch your work up, and you definitely don't want that to happen after you've just created this adorable stocking, okay? So you want to keep, like, you know, somewhat loose-ish loops, so that will help you maintain an even gauge here. So I'm going to continue on because I want my letter K to be a little bit longer. So I'm going to nestle my next one in here. I'm going to make sure that I've hooked onto my working yarn, and then I'm going to pull it through gently, and then I will slip stitch it through that loop. Okay, so now you can see it's starting to take shape. So I'm going to do that again, ever so gently. I think this is the perfect spot here. Pull through, whoops, and then I'll just pull through gently. So go ahead and do yours as long as you like, and then we're going to fasten off and start the top of the other part of the K. Or whatever letter you happen to be doing. The technique is the same idea, but in my case, I'm doing a K. So I'll meet you at the end of this post. So you want to be really aware of where your stitches are going. So this is a great example. So near the end here, I started to curve it a little bit. So my line is coming out here. So do not be afraid to pull it out if need be. This is the time to do it. So I realize that actually this next stitch was pulled over to the right a little bit too much, when in fact it should be pulled over a little bit more to the left. Okay, so I'm just going to make sure again that I've got my working yarn, pull through, and that I think is definitely much straighter. So I'm going to go ahead and snip off here. So just means that you have to go in here. Be careful not to pull your stitch out. Just snip it. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I will do one more stitch, and I will pull that through all the way. So I make sure that I have my working yarn here. I pull it through and then slip stitch and let it come right out. Okay, good. Now don't worry about this because we will tuck this in later and sew in that end. Not a problem at all. So now we want to do the looping part of the K, and this is where it can get a little tricky. So you just want to keep gauging that this has to curve, it has to curve and come across and then loop up. So you may have to stitch and unstitch, pull and unpull through. Be very, very patient with yourself, okay? So let's see. I think in this case, I would like to start the top of my loop right about here, just a little higher than the top of that one. So I think I'm going to start up here. And again, I am going to feed that little shorter end here. So I just want to make sure I have, you know, a bit of a tail to work with. And some people might even do a slip knot to begin. You can totally do that. This is just kind of the way I do it because I secure everything down afterwards. So I pull that through, and I'm going to start right away already heading towards my post here. So I'm going to insert, make sure, this is where it gets dicey. See here? You don't want to start working with this because you'll run out of yarn. So make sure it's the long one that you hook and pull through and pull through. Okay, now I go again on an angle, insert, pull through and pull through. And so I can see it's going nicely. I think I'll stay around here again. Whoops. Careful not to split your yarn, which is exactly what just happened. Okay, and in this case, because the stitches kind of go on an angle, so far it's fairly easy to follow. But in a moment, I am going to want to create a little bit more of a loop, a loopy effect. So see, it's kind of going straight at the moment, which is fine. And I'm going to continue on this angle here. So keep going ahead until we get to about here, and then I'm going to talk about how I'm going to round it out there. Okay, so I'm coming close to my post here. So I actually want to start creating some shaping, so I'm not going to go straight into this one. I'm going to come more into the side here to start creating a curve. Okay, and now I'm actually going to go into across that post there. Just find a spot that you can insert into. It's not exact. And now I'm going to go across again, going right past that post. Sorry if it's tricky to see. It's kind of hard to work something like this and make sure that the camera can see it. So just so you can see what's happening here. So see, I've curved it and I've crossed over the post. Don't worry about that tail there. So now I'm going to come back up a little bit to create a loop. Okay. So I'm going to insert there. Pull through. And then maybe right around there. Oops. Pull through and slip stitch. So you should be able to see how now, see how it's coming back up around? You just have to take your time and just be able to kind of visualize where you want it to go. So now I'm coming back around. I'm going to insert here. And now maybe right about there because I want to come back down now. Okay, so see, it's looping back around. Now I want to make sure that I crisscross here. So I want to lead it back towards there. It's a lot of feeding through and feeling it out. So you can see how it's looped back around and coming down there. So go ahead and finish. Okay, and I'm just coming to the end here of my initial, And you might notice that I'm just starting that little upward curve here. So I'm just going to find my next spot, which let's say is going to be right about there. Make sure that I hook, whoops, hook the yarn, bring it through, and just nice and relaxed. So you can see it's starting to curve up a little bit. And I think I want to do one more, so I'll just insert there. Gently pull it through and pull it through. And I think I'm going to leave that there. So you can see that I've got my post here, and I'm just going to weave this in. I'll tuck it in behind. So just put my hook there, and just going to find the spot right about there. And I will just hook, pull through, and then I will turn this inside out and weave that in. There we go. And there we have a monogrammed stocking using the slip stitch method. Hope you've enjoyed this, and I look forward to seeing some photos from you while you monogram all of your crochet projects. They can be stockings, they can be scarves or hats. I think it's always a neat thing to do, and it personalizes the gift. So hope you've enjoyed this. If you have any questions, of course, leave me a comment, or you can just email me directly at info@crochetcrafty.com. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next session, and happy crocheting!